Pam Bondi didn't just survive Stephen Colbert, she dismantled him live on air. What was supposed to be another late-night takedown turned into one of the most jaw-dropping reversals in recent talk show history. The moment Bondi stepped onto Colbert's stage, you could feel the tension. But no one expected what came next. Colbert fired his usual sarcastic shots, but Bondi was ready, calm, composed, and armed with facts. What started as a setup turned into a takedown. Within minutes, the audience was stunned into silence. Social media lit up. Clips of the exchange went viral. Headlines couldn't keep up. For the first time, the host looked rattled, and the guest took control. Was it a meltdown on Colbert's part, or a masterclass in handling hostile media? Either way, it was unforgettable. Stick around as we break down every moment of this fiery exchange. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more political showdowns. Pam Bondi is no stranger to pressure. As the former Attorney General of Florida, she's taken on major legal battles, argued before the highest courts, and built a reputation as one of the fiercest defenders of conservative values. Known for her sharp legal mind and unapologetic defense of Donald Trump during his impeachment, Bondi represents a different breed of political figure. She doesn't yell, she doesn't flinch, and she doesn't come unprepared. Her loyalty to the Constitution and her willingness to speak up on controversial issues have made her a target in liberal media circles, but also a symbol of resilience on the right. Stephen Colbert, on the other hand, has built his empire on satire. From his days on the Colbert Report to his current seat behind the desk on The Late Show, he's become a household name by skewering conservatives with biting humor. Loved by progressives, Colbert isn't just a comedian, he's a cultural force. Night after night, he turns political commentary into entertainment, and his studio audience is always ready to laugh along. But when Bondi sat down across from him, it wasn't just another episode. It was law versus entertainment, facts versus spin, a legal warrior walking into a comedy arena designed to mock her worldview. The contrast couldn't have been more clear, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. This wasn't just about one interview. It was about two different visions of America clashing on live television. Bondi entered what many call the liberal lion's den, not just to defend herself, but to challenge the host on his own turf. Millions of viewers tuned in. What they witnessed wasn't the usual late-night laugh fest. It was a political face-off where one side expected a win, and the other side came ready to fight for every inch. The energy inside the Ed Sullivan Theater was electric. The Late Show audience knew exactly what they were there for, another takedown of a high-profile conservative. Stephen Colbert's fans were buzzing with anticipation, ready to laugh, cheer, and watch their host do what he does best, mock, jab, and outwit anyone brave enough to step onto his stage wearing a red state badge. Then came the introduction. With his trademark smirk and sarcastic flair, Colbert delivered the setup. "Our next guest," he began, pausing just long enough for dramatic effect, "is here to defend the indefensible. Please welcome Pam Bondi." Laughter erupted, and the cameras captured it all. The audience clapping, some even booing, the mood clearly tilted against her before she'd said a single word. And then she appeared. Pam Bondi walked out in a navy blue dress, her expression calm, her movements deliberate. She wasn't there to charm or entertain. She was there on a mission. The studio's vibrant lights and liberal-themed stage stood in stark contrast to her understated appearance. She offered Colbert a handshake, firm, confident, unfazed. He accepted with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. It was a visual collision. Colbert's polished suit and smug posture versus Bondi's unshakable composure and legal authority. The clash had begun before a single question was asked. As she sat down and adjusted her microphone, the audience watched closely. Some whispered. Others crossed their arms, expecting her to squirm under pressure. But Bondi wasn't nervous. She wasn't flustered. She was controlled, alert, and fully aware of the terrain. She had just walked into the most hostile room on late-night television, and she looked ready to own it. The crowd was ready for a show. What they didn't realize was that the script was about to change. Stephen Colbert didn't waste time. Just minutes into the interview, he leaned in, eyes sharp and tone loaded. "Pam, you were Florida's Attorney General. You swore an oath to uphold the law. How do you square that with standing beside a president who pushed election denial? Doesn't that compromise your integrity?" The audience erupted in applause, already sensing a win for their host. But Bondi didn't flinch. She nodded slightly, her voice calm and measured. "Stephen, I took an oath to the Constitution, not to a political party. That oath doesn't expire just because the media doesn't like the questions being asked. When I see irregularities, I speak up. That's what any honest prosecutor would do." Colbert raised his eyebrows, his smirk returning. "Irregularities? 60 court cases, Pam. 60. No evidence of widespread fraud. They were all thrown out. Isn't it time to admit the truth?" Bondi held her ground. "Those cases weren't thrown out after looking at the evidence. Most were dismissed on procedural grounds. Jurisdiction, standing, timing. That's not the same as a court saying nothing happened. There's a legal difference, and you know that." A murmur spread through the audience. Some clapped, others went quiet. This wasn't the easy route they were expecting. Bondi wasn't stumbling or dodging. She was confronting the narrative head-on and doing it with precision. Colbert paused, sensing the energy shift, then tried again. "So you're saying there's still a case to be made?" "I'm saying questions should be answered, not silenced," Bondi replied. "That's what transparency is about. That's what the law is for. It's not partisan to demand clarity. It's responsible." The tension was building. For the first time in the segment, the crowd wasn't sure who was winning. Colbert had taken the first swing, but Bondi had answered with more than just words. She had answered with control. Colbert leaned in, dropping any pretense of subtlety. "Pam, at this point, aren't you just a mouthpiece for Donald Trump? You echo his talking points, defend his controversies, and now you're sitting here repeating the same claims about election irregularities. Where's the independence? Where's the objectivity?" The audience clapped. Some even laughed. But Bondi stayed composed, her response sharp and direct. "You want to talk about objectivity, Stephen? Where was yours during the Russia collusion coverage? You spent years pushing a narrative that ended with a report that debunked the very thing you said was fact. So let's talk integrity. Where was yours then?" A ripple went through the studio. Colbert blinked, brushing her words aside with a wave of his hand. "We're not here to rehash old stories. We're talking about right now." "Exactly," Bondi replied. "Let's talk about right now. The border is in crisis. Fentanyl is pouring into this country. Americans are dying. And instead of focusing on the real problems, we're caught in political games that ignore what families are actually facing." Colbert let out a chuckle. "So the solution is what? Build the wall? Maybe throw in some family separations while you're at it?" Bondi didn't hesitate. "That's a straw man, and you know it. No one's calling to separate families. What we want is legal immigration and border security. What we don't want is chaos that fuels drug cartels and human trafficking. The policies in place right now aren't working, and Americans feel it." The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some clapped in support, others stayed quiet. The playful energy in the room had shifted. It wasn't jokes and punchlines anymore. It was a serious exchange, and Bondi wasn't backing down. Colbert tapped his pen against his notes, his rhythm disrupted. "Okay, but you still haven't addressed why you continue to defend a man who's divided this country." Bondi leaned forward. "Divided? You want to talk about division? How about labeling half the country as threats to democracy? That kind of rhetoric is what truly tears people apart. I'm here because I believe in consistent principles. not partisan performances. The audience stirred again, the mood uncertain. Some murmured agreement, others sat stone-faced. Colbert was clearly growing frustrated. Bondi, meanwhile, looked exactly the same as when she walked in, calm, firm, and completely in control. This wasn't the exchange Colbert had planned, and for the first time in a long time, it showed. Colbert took a breath, then went in for what he clearly thought was the knockout. "Pam, you've talked a lot about law and integrity, but let's get real. Didn't your office receive a $25,000 donation from Trump's foundation right around the time you chose not to pursue fraud charges related to Trump University? That seems like a conflict of interest, or maybe just a well-timed favor." The audience gasped. Some laughed nervously. Others leaned forward, waiting for Bondi to flinch. She didn't. Her expression tightened for just a second. Then she straightened her posture and looked Colbert directly in the eyes. "I've been waiting for you to go there, Stephen," she said evenly. "And I'm glad you did. Let me be very clear. For you and for your audience, that donation was made to my political committee, not to me personally. It was fully legal, fully disclosed, and it had zero impact on any decision my office made." She raised one finger. "First, the decision not to pursue the Trump University case was made by career prosecutors in my office, not political appointees, not me. And that decision was based on the fact that New York was already handling the case. There was no overlap, no need for duplication." Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of documents, holding them up for the camera. "But since you're so concerned with ethics and donations, let's take a moment to talk about the Clinton Foundation. Millions of dollars accepted from foreign governments while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. Countries with records of human rights abuses. You want to talk about conflicts of interest? Let's be consistent." Colbert shifted in his seat. "Well, we'd have to verify the details of that before jumping to conclusions." Bondi didn't miss a beat. "I agree. Facts matter. And that's exactly what I've been saying all along. Apply the same standard to both sides. That's what real integrity looks like." The audience quieted. The clapping stopped. Even the laughter faded. This wasn't a late-night skit anymore. This was something else. Bondi wasn't just defending herself. She was challenging the show's double standard and doing it with precision. Colbert sat back, suddenly less confident, flipping through his notes for a comeback that wasn't there. Bondi remained still, eyes locked, papers still in hand. The studio was silent, and in that silence, a shift had happened. The audience, once laughing at the setup, was now sitting in the middle of a moment they hadn't expected. A guest who came prepared, a host who was caught off guard, and a conversation that had gone from entertainment to something real. Colbert leaned forward, visibly rattled, his voice a little sharper than before. "Let's not change the subject, Pam. We're talking about your decisions, not someone else's foundation." Bondi didn't back down. She looked him straight in the eye and replied, "I'm not changing the subject, Stephen. I'm asking for consistency. Your viewers deserve that. What they don't need is selective outrage that only lights up when it's politically convenient." There was a pause in the studio. Some in the audience nodded, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Bondi's tone was calm, but the message hit hard. "This isn't just about me or Donald Trump," she continued. "It's about how media shapes public perception. Americans are watching their grocery bills climb, crime rise in their neighborhoods, and the border remain wide open. And yet what do they see on TV? Another hit job, another distraction, another night of jokes instead of solutions." Colbert didn't respond right away. He looked down at his desk, then back at her, clearly searching for a way to take back control. But Bondi pressed on. "Mocking people you disagree with doesn't solve anything. It doesn't bring jobs back. It doesn't make cities safer. It doesn't stop fentanyl from coming across the border." Then she leaned in slightly, her voice clear and unwavering. Healthy democracy requires honest debate. Not just applause lines, not just clever monologues, but real, respectful exchange, even when we disagree. The room went still. No laughter, no clapping, just tension. The audience had come expecting entertainment. What they got instead was a rare moment of unfiltered truth. And for the first time that night, it wasn't the host who had control of the stage. It was the guest. Colbert sat back in his chair, his usual quick wit noticeably dulled. With a forced half-smile, he looked at Bondi and said, "Well, you certainly came prepared tonight." Bondi didn't hesitate. She nodded, calm and steady. "I respect your audience enough to show up with the facts. That's the least they deserve." The camera lingered for a second longer than usual before the show abruptly cut to commercial. No music, no laughter, just a studio full of people trying to process what they had just witnessed. Within minutes, social media exploded. The hashtag #sign Bondi owns Colbert shot to the top of trending lists across X. Clips of the interview went viral on YouTube and TikTok. Conservative voices called it a masterclass in standing firm. Fox News ran segments praising her poise, her preparation, and her refusal to be bullied. Headlines read, "Pam Bondi turns the tables." Meanwhile, CNN and other left-leaning outlets framed the moment as a heated and contentious exchange. Analysts debated whether Colbert had gone too far or if Bondi had managed to dodge accountability through smart deflection. But one thing everyone agreed on: this wasn't the interview anyone expected. In the midst of the firestorm, Bondi posted one sentence on X that summed it all up. "Respect isn't earned through applause. It's earned through truth." Her post racked up hundreds of thousands of likes in hours. Screenshots of her sitting firm while Colbert shuffled his notes became instant memes. Late-night politics had just changed, and Bondi wasn't just a guest anymore. She was now a symbol of how preparation, facts, and composure can shake even the most powerful media platforms. Whether you cheered or disagreed, one thing was certain: everyone was talking about Pam Bondi. So here's the question. Did Pam Bondi truly expose media bias, or did she simply dodge accountability with well-rehearsed lines? That's for viewers like you to decide. But one thing is clear. This wasn't yelling, it wasn't chaos, and it wasn't just another partisan shouting match. What we saw on that stage was strategy, facts, and unshakable discipline. Pam Bondi walked into one of the most hostile media environments imaginable. She didn't play victim. She didn't shout over Colbert. Instead, she let preparation and composure do the work. And that shift matters. Because maybe it's time to ask, has the late-night format, built on mockery and applause lines, become outdated when it comes to confronting guests like Bondi? Colbert came with punchlines. Bondi came with receipts. And the difference was felt across the country. She didn't just survive the segment, she flipped the rules. From that night forward, producers, pundits, and even viewers will think twice before assuming how these interviews will go. Because when someone walks in ready, respectful, and relentless, scripted comedy can't always hold its ground. This moment was a reminder that in today's media landscape, where optics usually win, truth told with clarity can still cut through. Bondi didn't overpower Colbert. She outmaneuvered him. So whether you support her or not, whether you agreed with every word or challenged her politics, there's no denying the shift that took place. The power dynamic changed. And it was all because one guest refused to play along and instead owned the narrative from the first handshake to the final line. Respectful defiance, delivered with preparation and purpose, that's how you win the room. And that's exactly what Pam Bondi did. Pam Bondi didn't just walk into the lion's den, she made the lion retreat. What we saw wasn't just another talk show interview. It was a turning point in how conservative voices can face off against traditionally hostile media and walk away with the upper hand. So now it's your turn. Was this a game-changing moment in political media, or just a well-played rebuttal? Was Colbert simply unprepared, or did Bondi dominate from start to finish? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more breakdowns of the most explosive media showdowns, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Only here at the Showdown spot.